Welcome to our math video for today. Today we are going to find the percentage of a number. Evidence-wise, we're going to first predict the value of a percentage of a number, talk about why that's important when we get there, and then we're actually going to go into how do you calculate that, how do you get an exact number. Learning experience, we're going to do 2 examples and 2 you-dos, although, well, you'll see what we're going to do with that. Then we'll have things to remember, and of course some suggested practice problems. I'm pretty sure they're from Savas this time. I cannot remember. So let's go on to our first example. So our first example here, we have Mr. H buys his parents some dinner one evening. He has to pay $50 for his meal. He also wants to give a 15% tip. So how much would Mr. H pay in total? First thing that we want to actually do, rather than just jumping right into this, is make a prediction. Now, this is easier depending on what your percentage is. With 15, it's going to be a little bit trickier, but it's something that you get good at with practice. A couple things we need to think about. How much do we initially have? We initially have $50. We also want to think about what would 15% be. Well, 15% of 50, I do not know. However, I do know that 33% is the same thing as a third. So 15% should be kind of like a sixth. It's not going to be exactly a sixth, but it's like half of a third almost. So if I think, what is a sixth of 50? Well, 50 times 10 would be, well, 5 times 10 would be 50. So a sixth of that would be a little bit less than 10, so maybe like 8-ish. So maybe 15% of 50 is like $8. And I've not done this problem before, so we're going to find out after we get to our second example. But this is always a good place to start. Try to make a prediction. That way, when you actually go and calculate it, we can check. Were we close? Is it going to be around $8? Is it going to be exactly $8? Probably not. But maybe it should be somewhat close. Bonus part of the video. So, it occurred to me when I was editing this that we could also start with the $50. Instead of having 50, we could just say that's 100. So what would 15% of 100 be? Well, it would be $15. So half of that then means it should be about $7.50. So that's probably a more accurate guess. That'd probably be a more accurate prediction. Again, I thought of this after I had recorded it already, so I just stuck it in at the end. You can use that if you'd like as well. In the My Hero Academia universe, only about 20% of people don't have some sort of superpower. If your school has 800 students, how many of them would not have superpowers? I just want you to make a prediction for now. You can do a little bit of math to help you with your prediction. What is 20%? How can you try to make that a little bit simpler? Whatever you need to do. But just make a prediction for now. Ready, go. So, let's actually calculate this now. So, in our previous part, we predicted that it was going to be $8. I'm just going to write that up here, just so that we can try to remember that. Of course, we'd have to add that to the $50, so really our answer in this case would be $58. That's going to be my guess. As for how we actually do this, step 1 is to turn your percent into a decimal. So we would divide this by 100 and we would get 0.15. That's step 1, that's all it is. Step 2 is multiply the total by the decimal. So, we have 0.15. We're going to multiply that by 50, because we have started with $50. 0 times 5 is 0, 0 times 1 is 0, 0 times 0 is still 0. We add a 0. 5 times 5, that's a little bit more interesting. It's 25, so we carry the 2. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 would be 7. We add these up, we get 0, 5, and 7. Now we have to remember that we had 2 digits after our decimal. So if our decimal is here on the end, we're going to have to move it over twice to there. So we would get $7.50. If we compare that to our prediction, that's pretty darn close. Now, in this specific problem, we then have to add that to the 50 to see how much we'd add in total. You won't always have to do that in every single problem you do, but in this case, we do. So we add these up, and in total, Mr. H, that's me, we had to pay $57.50. I sure hope my parents enjoyed that, because that's quite an expensive meal. Take a minute, pause, write this down, especially make sure that you write down our checklist here, because this is really, really, really going to help you on the next you do. Because guess what you're going to do? You're going to do basically the same thing. Pause the video now. So your second you do. You're doing the exact same problem as the first you do. The only difference here is now you are actually calculating the number of students without superpowers. So use the checklist that we made in the previous part to help you do so. And I want you to write down, was your prediction accurate? Was it completely off? Was it kind of there? I also want you to think about that. How close was your prediction? Pause the video and do this now. So a few things to remember from this video. Making a prediction before you calculate your value can be super helpful. In our case, in the example that we did, we were able to tell that we were definitely correct because our prediction was so close to what we actually found as an answer. It's not always going to be exactly your answer. That's okay. But trying to make that prediction and practicing making predictions like that can be super, super useful. As for actually calculating it, you're first going to turn your percent into a decimal. Remember, that was step 1. And then you're going to multiply that decimal by the total you have. That was step 2. To turn your percent into a decimal, all you have to do is divide by 100, as illustrated by our Spider-Mans down there. So we have a few different suggested practice problems from here today. Again, they're from Savas. Give them a shot. Pause the video, and remember, always give it your best. Always go.